It's the Poojie Podcast, proudly sponsored by Cimarron Golf Club. What is going on, Pooj crew? Thank you for being here for episode 90 of the Poojie Podcast. Really excited for today's episode. Got a great guest lined up who's been on the podcast before. We're going to talk about some fun hockey. Let's do that hockey action tonight. We're going to be talking some hockey. And before you say, well, Justin, we're here for the football content, this is going to be a fun one. I love talking about these matchups. I think the NHL playoffs are by far the best postseason setup format in all of professional sports. I know we all love those game sevens and other sports, but I think when it comes to hockey, the physicality just kind of overtakes everything else, and we'll get into that. So extremely excited to welcome this guest on. And before we get there, thank you to our sponsors, String Sports Brewery and Shores Pub Mandarin, as well as Cimarron Golf Club. Of course, always doing a great job at those three locations. And go follow us on Instagram as well as Twitter or Facebook, whatever you prefer. And if you're watching on YouTube, go follow on Spotify or Apple, iHeart, Google. Or if you're listening on the go subscribe on YouTube. But without further ado, let's get host of the Rough Cut podcast, Vinny Milani, on here. And Vinny, how's everything been going with you and the Rough Cut boys?
It's been going great, man. We've been rolling 3 days a week, just killing it, trying to kill it, trying to take over the game, just like you, man. I gotta say, before I can't go any further with this, man, you are killing it with the show. And something that I've been attached to every week with you is the betting that you do. I love those little graphics that you're putting up on social media with the betting. I'm like, dude, that is a sick idea, and that gets me hooked.
Well, hey, if only I hit a little bit more and actually made more money off of it, I'd put it out more frequently. But I'm going to start putting them out even more, because with hockey playoffs here, NBA playoffs here, and baseball obviously right in the middle of the season, there's plenty of action to be taken. So yeah, Poojie Picks on Instagram. Be on the lookout for that. It'll look kind of like a Busch Light can, but it's Poojie Pub Crawl Brew. Pooj Brew is what we call it. So go check that out. So I appreciate that, Vinny. Well, it's been a while since we've talked hockey on here. 2021 season was a little bit wonky, but not as wonky as the 2020 season that saw the Tampa Bay Lightning crowned champions. Tell me a little bit about this 2021 season, some of the changes that may have happened or what was going on with it.
It's been a pretty wild season. I mean, they really brought all the teams together, try to keep the travel to a minimum, obviously, during these COVID times. It let us see a North Division with all the Canadian teams and the blood, that the passion, the fighting, the rivals between teams like Calgary and Edmonton. We got to see that 8 times this season. It really made the rivalries stand out the most during this season. I liked it a lot. I wish that one thing with like this sport and baseball and basketball, the seasons are just so long normally. With a 56 game schedule this season, it was kind of nice to see a shortened season. The passion, the rivalries kind of intensify because it's a short season. They're playing each other over and over again. I loved it. I'm okay with it. I hope it comes back. I mean, I don't want to say I want to get rid of the 82 game schedule, but it'd be nice to shorten up the season and keep these rivalry games actually like meaningful.
Yeah, no, it's definitely fun to watch. And when I started getting into hockey, I always heard the Battle of Alberta. You just mentioned it there with Calgary and Edmonton. And I remember one of the first times I watched, I think it was, is it Mike Smith, the goalie?
Yep.
Or Mike Smith came out like they like gladiators to center ice and started fighting. And it was just like, how can you not love this? Like the physicality, the intensity, like you mentioned. And you talk about rivalries. We're seeing some great rivalries in the playoffs right now. So those divisions, no more conferences. The NHL just comes out and says, we're not giving conference trophies. We're just doing divisional, seeding through the playoffs until the Final Four. Let's get into the bracket real quick, because I know that's what everyone's here for. We'll look at we'll look at all 8 matchups. We'll kind of work our way through the bracket. We'll start in the East with the Penguins versus the Islanders. This was maybe one of the most competitive, if not the most competitive division from top to bottom, 1 to 4 when it came down to the playoffs.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And unfortunately, as a Ranger fan, it was tough to see my Rangers not be in the playoffs because of how competitive this division was. And I mean, you look at all 4 teams that are in this division in the playoffs, you could realistically see all of them making at least to the Stanley Cup Finals. Maybe not the Islanders, but like I have the Islanders. Well, I'll get into the predictions when we get to it, but I like the Islanders, man.
Yeah, no, Islanders are a fun team. and they won game one. Like, they upset in the very first game one, they upset. They take home ice advantage away from Pittsburgh, and they win in overtime in what was one of the nastiest goals you've ever seen from Kyle Palmieri, who was a trade deadline acquisition?
Oh, yeah. A steal from the New Jersey Devils that the Islanders acquired. This is the second season in a row where the Islanders have acquired a big-time playoff piece in the form of Kyle Palmieri this season and J.G. Pageau, in which they acquired from Ottawa 2 years ago. I mean, Lou Lamoriello, the GM for the New York Islanders, is an absolute genius. We talk about Steve Yzerman of the Tampa Bay when he was with the Lightning, making all those genius moves that helped win that Stanley Cup. Lou Lamoriello is one of those GMs who's making moves and bettering this team to fit Barry Trotz's system. I love it.
Yeah, it's a great team. Matthew Barzal obviously is one of the better players. Anders Lee, you add Kyle Palmieri to that. It's a great team going up against another great team. It feels like Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin have been in the playoffs like every year for the last 20 years. Is that like the best duo over the last 2 decades?
Oh, yeah. Gino and Sid the Kid are just nasty together. I mean, that team, it's one thing with like those two, but it's what Sidney Crosby specifically can do with the players that are around him. He makes everyone else around him. It's kind of like the Tom Brady effect, where Tom Brady could get any receiver he wants in football, and he's going to make him into a top, maybe not top level receiver, but a receiver to be worried about. And Sidney Crosby does that. He did it with Connor Sheary. He's doing it with Jake Gensel. He's doing it with every player that he plays with. And the team as a whole just plays better when Sidney Crosby's in the lineup. The Penguins are without Malkin. They were without Malkin at least for game one. If they can get him back, that'll be a huge difference maker going forward.
Yeah, I think a lot of teams trying to overcome injuries. We saw my Lightning get a few players back yesterday's game. We'll get into that. But Penguins, Islanders, let's get into the prediction. Who do you got in this matchup?
I have the Islanders in 7. I said it on my show, and I'm happy to have game one kind of made me look good, but Kyle Palmieri and J.G. Pageau are going to be the two guys who step up big for the New York Islanders. They're my X factors. You saw it in game one, and I'm not just saying this because it happened in game one. I said it on my show. They're going to be the X factors. 3 goals scored by the Islanders. Kyle Palmieri for 2 and J.G. Pageau for 1. They're on a line together. They're going to be red hot. Islanders in 7.
I like it. I'm actually going to go Penguins in 7. I think the team is just too good. And to be honest with you, we talked earlier about the betting world. The Islanders burned me for about 2 weeks straight about a month ago. They were on a little bit of a slide. I think they were like 3-7 over a 10-game span, and I lost faith in them, and I can't shake that. I'm going to go Penguins in 7 in this one. Not to just go chalk, because I do think the Islanders are good, but I think the Penguins get it together and actually come out on top on this one. So,
but the Islanders are such a boring team too. It's unfortunate because they play well. It's just, if you're a casual hockey fan, I don't think I would ever recommend you watching a New York Islander. Maybe in the playoffs it's different, obviously, but the way the New York Islanders play, it's like in football where it's like that defense, like a defensive heavy team. You don't see many points scored. It's like the Jags from 2017.
Yeah, ground and pound.
Exactly. That's what the New York Islanders do. They have great coaching, though, and Islanders and 7.
There you go. I like it. Puck possession, time possession, they control the game. Let's get to the next matchup, Capitals versus Bruins, which is just another tasty one. I was licking my lips when I saw this matchup because these are just 2 phenomenal teams, and no matter what way this division split, they were going to be some pretty fun matchups. But we got Capitals, Bruins, and Capitals took game 1, another overtime game. The first game of the playoffs this year was on Saturday, the 15th, a few days ago. Capitals win in overtime, a pretty interesting game there, 3-2 for the Capitals. What do you see in this matchup?
I see that the Capitals better hope that they get Vitek Vanacek back, or it's going to be very interesting. They could rally behind a Craig Anderson. They've had a few call-ups to make sure that they have the goaltending depth just in case, but the goaltending is what kind of scares me with the Washington Capitals, because they have 2 very young goaltenders if they get Ilya Samsonov back. But with the amount of firepower that the Boston Bruins have, it would be very tough for the Washington Capitals to beat them in a 7-game series with that goaltending. But again, good coaching kind of leads you far in the playoffs, and that's what could happen with Peter Laviolette and the Washington Capitals. And any team with Alexander Ovechkin on it will do some damage. But the Boston Bruins a scary team, especially with after acquiring Taylor Hall.
Yeah, so they acquired Taylor Hall, who like tripled his points from when he was with Buffalo in about a fourth of the games. It was absurd watching him towards the end of the season after the trade deadline. He really made a difference for that team. Obviously, they have Brad Marchand, who is looking to avenge a Game 1 loss, and they still have David Pastrnak and Patrice Bergeron, which, again, just like the Penguins, it feels like these guys have been together forever, which I love about hockey, to be honest with you. In the NBA, I don't know half the teams that the players are on. In hockey, I'm like, oh, I know exactly where these guys are. They've been together forever, and I kind of like that dynamic of it. I was doing a little research, obviously, before we did this, and it seemed like the Capitals maybe didn't necessarily control the game against the Bruins. They kind of had a few deflections, maybe a few pucks go in net that weren't necessarily good scoring chances.
Yeah. They were a very opportunistic team in Washington, and sometimes that's what wins games there. And obviously with the Capitals doing that in Game 1, but there's so many storylines with this series. I mean, you have Zdeno Chara facing his former team after so many years in Boston. You have two of the best center icemen in the league, in Patrice Bergeron and Nicholas Backstrom, and then you obviously have the perfection line in Boston, and you have Ovechkin in Washington. So many solid players. And I just think that Boston, like for so many seasons, you could come to this point of the season, you're like, if Boston just had the scoring depth, they could really do some damage. And that is what Taylor Hall has brought to this team. Not only from himself, but he's making everyone else better around him, including David Krejci, who has been buzzing since Hall was acquired. So it's a good series, man.
Yeah, it'll be a fun one. Obviously, the Bruins have, I would consider, maybe the more superstar namesake power. Let's get into predictions. I'll go first this time. I'm going to go Bruins in this one, and I'm going to go 7 in this one as well. I'm going to go Bruins in 7. I think the Capitals, like you said, are talented enough to push it to the limit, but I think the Bruins are just too powerful offensively. I think they're going to take it over the Caps.
Yeah, my bracket that we did, I had the Bruins in 6. After watching Game 1, I'm kind of regretting that. Like you said, with Washington really just holding their own against Boston and being able to capitalize on those opportunities in Game 1, I think that they can continue doing that. But again, the goaltending is a big concern for Washington. Whichever goalie ends up in net, it's still a concern. But you have Craig Anderson, who hasn't played that much during this season, and he was on the taxi squad all season long. It's basically like the emergency goaltender for the Caps if their 1 and 2 goes down. So I have Boston in 6 because of that.
Okay, so we got Boston in 6. So we're both going with the Bruins there. So that's our first name. Let's get to the North Division. We talked about it earlier. America's hat. We got the All-Canadian Division. 8 teams, which really puts it into perspective. A fourth of this league is pretty much Canadian, and they haven't won a championship in like 40 years, which I'm not complaining about. So not mad. It's a Canadian sport, but America's running it. We do have 3 times the amount of teams, but whatever. We won't mention that. We got Maple Leafs versus the Canadians, the number 1 Leafs versus the number 4 Canadians. A little bit of a disparity here when it comes to the points and the quality of these teams.
Yeah, it's a pretty big mismatch, at least on paper, when you look at the two teams. I mean, Toronto has a star-studded lineup. You look up and down that lineup. You have Austin Matthews, American boy, by the way. I'm a big USA hockey guy. I'm always promoting them. But Austin Matthews, of course, leading the way in Toronto. Then Jumbo Joe, Mitch Marner. There's just so many stars on that team. Is you have to wonder, if you're a Habs fan, can Carey Price hold up in a 7-game series against all of this firepower? But on the Montreal end, you do have another USA hockey-born player in Cole Caulfield, who we refer to him as Gold Caulfield, and he is going to be a stud in this league, but not in the playoffs. Maybe he scores a few goals in the playoffs, but not enough to really keep Montreal in it. Yeah,
I saw you were hyped when he got called up. I saw a few weeks ago you were promoting him pretty well on the Rough Cut, so that was pretty fun to see. I don't really think there's too much to this series, to be honest with you. I think the Maple Leafs are what they are. They're not pretenders at all. I'll let you go first with the predictions on this one. Actually, by the way, weird little note here. First game of this series isn't until Thursday the 20th. Yeah. A lot of other series are going to be 3 or 4 games in. Do you know why that is?
The North Division had an odd setup this season because Vancouver, I believe it was, Vancouver and I want to say Calgary had makeup games. That like literally last night while the during the like playoffs, there was a regular season game in between all of the action last night. And Saturday was the same way. Vancouver was one of those teams, and Edmonton is obviously in the playoffs, and that was another team who had makeup games. So I think the reason why the North is starting so much later is because of seeding and making sure that each team in the North Division has enough rest to enter the playoffs.
I got you. Okay, to give them some time and everything. That makes sense. Cool little fact here. I was looking at the schedule. Every game is every other day. So there's going to be a lot of hockey on. There's not these 2-day travel layoffs, 1 day, whatever. It's every other day. There's going to be hockey. Hopefully we get a lot of game 7s because that means more hockey for us. Let's get to predictions for you. Maple Leafs versus the Canadiens.
I have the Maple Leafs in 5. I think Carey Price can steal the Canadiens a game, but I don't think there's anything more than that. The Leafs have another team with the problem at goaltending. You don't know if it's going to be Freddie Anderson or if it's going to be Jack Campbell. I believe Jack Campbell was announced as game 1 starter, but it's still a lot of question marks in that area. Can Jack Campbell stand the test of the playoffs? But I don't think Montreal has enough firepower to really push him to his limits. So Toronto in 5.
I am also going to go Toronto in 5 as well for the sole fact I don't know all the stats like you just said, but for the fact that I know they are the far better team, but I'm always scared to take the sweep because the first time the other team wins, I'm going to be like, well, there goes my prediction. And then game 4, maybe I'll root for the Canadiens. Who knows? But I'll go Maple Leafs in 5 as well. Again, first game for that is on the 20th, this coming Thursday. Next game in this division, in the North Division, is the Oilers versus the Winnipeg Jets. Oilers led by 2 of the best players in all of hockey, and that might be the only thing this team has, but it's gotten them to the number 2 seed. What do you think about this matchup?
You said it right there. This is the thing that pushes the Oilers anywhere they go. It's Leon Draisaitl, and it's that guy named Connor McDavid. I don't know if anyone's ever heard of him, but he's kind of a big deal. But yeah, that's what really pushes them this far. Mike Smith has had a very, I don't want to say unusual. That's exactly what I'll say. Mike Smith has had a very unusual season. He's normally a very inconsistent goaltender, but he's had more better games than bad games this season. That's kind of what also helped the Oilers get here. But on the Winnipeg side, if you are a Jacksonville listener and you are familiar with the Icemen, they did just call up Mikhail Burden, who spent not a lot of time. He did spend a season here in Jacksonville playing for the Icemen. He will probably be the 4th goaltender on the list, so you might not see him, but it's still pretty cool to see like that not a hometown guy because he was born here, but like a guy you probably saw in Jacksonville make it up to the show. It's kind of big deal. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, that's neat. That is pretty cool. I also have this little tidbit for you. I can't remember if it's Pittsburgh or Boston. Isn't one of their head coaches, didn't he start in Jacksonville with the Lizard Kings?
Bruce Cassidy. Yeah. Bruce Cassidy from the Boston Bruins. Yeah.
I heard that, and I thought that was the most absurd thing I've ever heard. I was like, that's like, you look at all these great hockey coaches, you think they're all these like Canadians or Northeastern guys from colleges. And to think that one of the best coaches on the best teams is from Jacksonville Lizard Kings, that's a pretty neat little stat there too for Jacksonville. So, but this will be a fun one. I think the Jets are going to have a tough time controlling this matchup. With any team's going to have a tough time controlling Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl. But I also think they do have enough offensive firepower themselves in the Jets, no pun intended, to actually compete offensively with the Oilers. I don't think these are going to be 2-1 games or 3-1 games. I think these, if you're betting, take the over on every single one of these games. I think anything over 5.5 is going to hit. We'll look at 4-2, 4-3, 5-3, whatever it is. Am I right on that?
Connor Hellebuck is the 2nd best goaltender in the league, and he might have something to say against that, but it's one of those things where the Jets defense is bad. They have a very, very bad back end. And when you're playing against Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl, you need to be able to play defense. And that's just something the Jets just have not been able to really tie down for their team. So if there is a lot of high scoring games, it's because the Oilers are just pumping the Jets defense. And that's how it goes. The Oilers themselves don't have that good of a defense too. So you realistically could see some very high scoring games, but Connor Hellebuck is still the goaltender for the Jets. And it is tough to score on him.
I just say get pucks on net and it'll find its way in. And no matter how good he is, 2 or 3 or 4 are going to drip in if they're shooting 35 or 40 times a game.
Yeah.
What's up?
You could easily see Connor. The thing is, you could easily see Connor McDavid just blow past their defenseman and then just put the puck in the back of the net because that's what Connor McDavid does. He just he just scores at will.
Yeah. Yeah, it'll be an interesting one to watch for those reasons, like you just mentioned. 2 good front lines, 2 below average back lines, very good goalie on one end, decent goalie on the team with the better forwards. We'll see what happens. What's your prediction here for the Oilers versus the Jets?
I have the Oilers in 7. I think that the Oilers firepower ends up taking it for him. I see some inconsistencies from Mike Smith here in the playoffs that give the Jets some games here, but in the end, I think the Oilers offensive firepower and Connor McDavid. It's just funny saying the Oilers offensive firepower when it's really just 2 guys. I mean, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins is great. They have some, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins is good. The rest of their team is all right. But it's like your firepower is Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl, and that's okay to give you a playoff dub here.
Yeah, it is funny. You talk about that, like even depth. Like it's not like they have like lines. Like you look at other teams that might have more depth where their second or third line can come in and actually create havoc. But I'm going to go with the Oilers in 6 here just for the sole reason that, like I said, I like pucks on net. I want to take the team that just has the better offense. And it might not be by much, but they have the better player by a lot. So I'm going to go with the Oilers in 6 here. Let's get to the Central Division. First game tonight. So by the time people are listening to this, Game 1 will already be happening. What's going to be the headline for the Hurricanes Predators Game 1?
Predators don't stand a chance. That'll be your headline right there. Is the Preds outmatched by the Carolina Hurricanes in every aspect of the game.
Yeah, Hurricanes only a few points away from being President Cup trophy winners. Sorry, a little golf came out in me. The President Cup President Trophy winners with 80 points, winning the Central Division and getting the treat to play the Predators, who barely scratched into the playoffs by way of beating the Hurricanes twice at the end of the seasons. At the end of the season, when the Hurricanes were resting their starters. I mean, do we look at any storylines here?
There is, when I was doing my preview for the first round, I was like, I was making some graphics for the show, and I was like, man, okay, I'm putting in stats for every team, and every team seems like they belong here. And then you get to the Nashville Predators, and you're like, they rank in the bottom 10 for goals for. They rank bottom 10 for goals against, and well, why are they even here? But that division this all season long was kind of a mess. Dallas never really found their rhythm because they battled like the COVID bug and injuries all season long, which is no excuse. And I don't mean to just completely rip on the Predators, but the Carolina I'll say this: the Carolina Hurricanes are going to do to the Predators what they did to the New York Rangers last season in the play-in round.
Was that a sweep by chance?
That was a very heartbreaking sweep.
So are we taking Hurricanes in 4 for you?
I am taking Hurricanes in 4, yes.
Damn, I was going to take Hurricanes in 4, and that was going to be my sweep.
Yeah,
I'll take Hurricanes in 4. My roommate Matt, resident Ravens expert, will be happy to hear that prediction. Hopefully he's not going to be screaming tonight over some poor play. But Sebastian Aho and Svechnikov, I don't even know his first name. We just call him Svechy, but
Andrei Svechnikov.
Svechnikov, yeah. They're 2 of the young dominant guys in the league, so it's going to be fun to watch what they can do. And what's weird to me is the Nashville Predators should be better based on who they have on their roster. They do have some good players, no superstars per se, but Roman Josi, probably a top 10 defenseman in the league, I would say.
Yeah.
You got 2 decent goalies in Saros and Rene, and then you got some decent forwards. It's just the namesake. I know these names, and if I know these names, they must be decent.
Yeah, and there's a guy for Nashville. His name's Philip Forsberg. He gets the AOK from George Kittle. I guess they're two boys. But I mean, when you look at the Nashville Predators team, it's just like Philip Forsberg's been hurt all season long. You haven't really seen much of him. And then Ryan Johansson's like, it's just a lot of meh. In their forward group, and you can't win championships if you don't have someone who could really consistently put it in the back of the net. Their defense is good. Yossi, Ryan Ellis, those guys are solid, but Carolina's just so good. They got the coaching, the scoring, the defense. Goaltending is obviously a question, but when you have great coaching, you have great defense, and you have great scoring, you really don't need to worry about that too much.
Yeah. We'll see how it goes tonight. I'm liking the Hurricanes. I think this might be the easiest matchup of the first round. We go to the second matchup in the Central. Panthers versus the Lightning. Game 1 was last night. Is it an exaggeration to say this was the best game of the first round so far?
That was the best game of the first round so far, and this will be the best series of the first round, if not the best series of the whole entire playoffs.
Oh boy.
I have said that. I have said it since the beginning on my show. I said this series is going to be the best because you talked about it before with the division realignment, and you play these teams 7 or 8 times a season. You really develop a hatred, and then you get into the playoffs and you have to play them at least 4 more times, and it's back to back to back. And there is just so much hatred that was formed in the regular season between these two teams that you'll now see in a heightened environment in the playoffs. Fans are there. The fans are going to be packed in the Amalie Arena. The fans are packed in the BB&T Center, whether that be of Lightning fans or Panther fans. You just can't tell in Sunrise. But with all that hatred, all that hostility, there is just so much buzz in this series, and I'm glued to my TV when these games are on.
Yeah, I'm amped. I felt like last night was the ultimate playoff hockey game. Lightning take a 1-0 lead after a Panthers goal gets called off. Panthers respond to go 1-1. Panthers take the lead to go 2-1. Lightning score 2 in a row to go up 3-2. Panthers come back to 4-3. Then the Lightning end up winning it 5-4 in the third period on a beautiful Braden Point little 5-holer with a minute left. My brother had fallen asleep, and he said, is the game in overtime? And I said, no, the game's over. It ended about 20 minutes ago. He was like, what? I had no idea what's going on. It was an ultimate playoff hockey game. And you know what? You talk about the hatred. I love this between the Lightning and the Panthers. I think the Lightning, it's almost like they've just been waiting for the Panthers to get to this point. Like little brother is waking up and finally here to pummel. It hit puberty, finally ready to beat up big brother. And let's see what's going to happen. I mean, that's honestly how it feels to me.
Yeah, I mean, it was an exciting game for sure last night. I mean, it kind of hurt my feelings. You mentioned the Rangers earlier. We mentioned the Rangers earlier, and you talk about how they get swept and all the heartache that Ranger fans have. And the person who made that pass to Braden Point to set up that goal was former Ranger Ryan McDonough. A crispy pass to Braden Point to set up that goal, man. And he was if you want to sum up what that series is going to be like in one video, I posted it on our socials today. Braden Point celebrating that goal after late in the game, that emotion. He didn't normally in hockey, you stop in the zone and you celebrate with the boys, and then you kind of do dabs down the line, and that's it. Braden Point was so buzzed after that goal. He flew by everybody, blew through the line, and just started hugging Ryan McDonough and the whole entire team all together on the bench. That right there is just what you're going to see in the playoffs. Just the excitement and pure passion for this game and this series all wrapped up in one. It's going to be great.
Yeah, it's going to be a real fun one. Panthers were actually home dogs yesterday as the number 2 seed by way of the Lightning getting back 5 of their superstars: Steven Stamkos, Nikita Kucherov, Victor Hedman, Ryan McDonough, and Andre Palat, who all had impacts on the game. All of them had a point in the game, and besides Andre Palat, who had, I think, 20 minutes of ice time, which is actually pretty impressive for a forward. But all of them come in, make an immediate impact, and if you didn't bet Lightning minus 125 when it opened, you missed out on a lot of money because they had 5 superstars coming back for game 1, and it's only going to get better from here. But to say that, Huberdeau and Barkov on the other side, they're going to be hungry to fight. We talked about the Lightning a lot. The Panthers, I told my roommate Matt, I said, this is the year I don't want to play the Panthers because it feels like they're finally ready to be great. And I'm scared.
Yeah, this might hurt some Lightning fans, but This Panthers team is very similar to that Columbus Blue Jackets team that swept the Lightning, 2 years ago? And it's the biggest key here is John Cooper making those adjustments. I say it all the time. I've said it so many times before. John Cooper has to make adjustments. He hasn't done it before. He did it when they won the Stanley Cup, and that's what really helped them get past all those teams and win that cup. But when they got swept by the Columbus Blue Jackets, it was John Cooper's inability to adjust to what John Tortorella and the Columbus Blue Jackets did. They're playing another great coach in Joel Quenneville of the Florida Panthers, who's going to be able to just really jam what the Lightning do. And that's what happened last night in last night's game. The Panthers were just clogging up the neutral zone and forcing the Lightning to make mistakes. And they capitalized on many of them during that game. It's just they could not keep up with all the firepower that the Tampa Bay Lightning have. I've said it on my show too. They're a bunch of cheaters, man. It's good to go through the whole season without these two guys and being able to do whatever you want with the salary cap because you don't have Nikita Kucherov's contract during the regular season. And now you get to the playoffs and it's okay for him to come back. Oh, man.
Hey, it's okay. It's like LeBron James and the Lakers. Actually, not even LeBron. It's like NBA players right now. They just sit out. LeBron's like, okay, we'll take the 7th seed, and Steph's like, we'll take the 8th seed, whatever. We'll get to the playoffs and then we'll care. I don't want to say that's exactly what happened because I think in NHL it was a lot more difficult with only 4 teams making it. But there is some feeling of that, especially if you're not a Lightning fan. If you are a Lightning fan, you have to dig deep to accept that could have been the case.
Yeah, and if I'm a Lightning fan, I don't give a crap about any of that. We got the boys back, and they're buzzing, man. It's great to see. Kucherov looked like himself. I mean, this man's coming off of hip surgery this season. He missed the entire season due to that, trying to recover from that. Stamkos, I'm not too sold on Stamkos being that hurt at the end of the season there. It was just kind of like a recovery thing, making sure that he's at 100% for the playoffs. And that's scary, man. When you have 100% Kucherov and you have 100% Steven Stamkos, and then the rest of the team,
2 goals,
and that's not even bringing up Vasilevsky. That's not even bringing up Vasilevsky, who's the best goaltender in the league, who let up 4 goals last night. That's not going to happen often, Florida Panther fans. You need to really just temper back expectations and say, okay, 4 goals, it's a lot, but you're not going to do that all the time for playoffs, Vazzy.
Yeah, no, 4 goals in a normal game against a normal goalie is a pretty decent amount of goals, especially against Vasilevsky, who has proven to be one of the better, if not the best. I'd say the best. But then again, I'm extremely biased.
Oh, he is the best.
Yeah, he is. He's the best goalie in the NHL, and 4 goals against him is just a testament to the Panthers' offense last night. But then the 5 goals from the Lightning is just them being able to score at will when the pressure's on. It didn't seem like it, to be honest with you. From the 56 games I watched during the season, it doesn't feel like the Lightning – it didn't feel to me like the Lightning were going to be able to come back from that. But then I forgot to equate that they had all these guys back. They ended up coming back. Let's get into predictions. Panthers versus Lightning. Who do you got in this one?
I have the Lightning in 7. I think that the Panthers are going to grind them out to 7 games just because of who Joel Quenneville is. Honestly, there's 2 outcomes to this series. It's either going to go 7 or the Lightning are going to sweep them in 4. Those are the only 2 outcomes I see because I think that the Panthers, it's one of those things where you enter the playoffs and you're like, man, I was born in South Florida. I was born into like the Panthers. Like my family's from New York. So it's like we grew up on Rangers hockey, but we went to so many Panther games. So like they're kind of like my second team. So I pull for them. I enter the playoffs. I'm like, man, I think they're going to grind them out to 7. That was my prediction. And I saw last night and I'm like, this is where my hope gets like really high and then gets just crushed by the Tampa Bay Lightning like they normally do. And they sweep them in 4. And I have another heartbreak suffered because of the Tampa Bay Lightning. So Tampa in 7, but do not be surprised if it goes 4.
Well, I am very hesitant to make a prediction here due to superstition and all that good stuff. So I'll just leave it to the fact that I'm wearing this jersey, and that will if you're watching, that's how you know who I'm going with. And if you've just listened, that's how you know who I'm going with. I'm not going to put a game on it because if it does go to 7, I am going to be shitting bricks while watching Game 7 because that's how it typically is for Game 7s, even when it's not my team. But I will go Lightning here for purposes of what we're doing. My fingers are crossed, so no superstition trickles in. I will go Lightning here, and if I had to put a number on it just to say it, I would go with 5. I do think that if the Lightning were capable of doing that last night on their first game back together, full speed, back together, 100%, first game of the playoffs, not only a regular season, but just playoffs, I think they'll kind of develop better chemistry moving forward, and I think it'll get faster and mesh a little bit better for them moving forward. I think the Panthers played well enough to get 1, but I'm going to go Lightning in 5. I want it to go 7 for the fact that it would be a great series. I want it to go 5 for the fact that I don't want to have a heart attack. So
there you go.
That's what I'm going with. Let's get to the West. Avalanche versus the St. Louis Blues. The Avalanche were the President Trophy winners, so they come out of the season with 82 points versus the Blues, a very experienced St. Louis Blues who won the championship, 2 years ago, right?
Yep.
Yeah, so go for it.
Yeah, they're a team that, like, we don't talk about the Blues too much. They had a tough season. They kind of clawed their way into the playoffs, and with like the Avalanche, you automatically look at this game on paper and you're like, man, the Blues do not stand a chance. But the Blues have something that kind of does not bode well for the Colorado Avalanche. That's that experience. I mean, you still have Jordan Binnington back there, Coach Craig Berube still there, Tarasenko. They still have some key pieces from that Stanley Cup run that could surprise a lot of people matched up against another loaded team like the Colorado Avalanche.
Yeah, no, they when it comes to this time of the year, especially with hockey, I think experience does go a long way. I think having that playoff, and that's, again, going back to the Lightning, that's why I think I'm so high on the Lightning being able to push through, is the experience that these guys have on the Blues. That being said, I don't know if it's going to be that much of a series. I think the Avalanche with McKinnon leading the charge is just going to be a lot to handle. What do you see in this one on your end as far as the series goes?
I think the St. Louis, I said it on my show and I was like, I don't know what I feel about this. I said it, but then I'm like, I think the St. Louis Blues are the team that the Colorado Avalanche did not want to face when it came down to whether they would play Minnesota or whether they would play St. Louis, just because the goaltending in St. Louis and Jordan Binnington, if you get Stanley Cup playoffs, Jordan Binnington, it could go 7. But Jordan Binnington has had a very difficult season, so it's tough to say which Binner you're going to get. And I think that if you get a Jordan Binnington that's not at 100% or not playing as well as he did back then, you could really see the Colorado Avalanche really pile up a lot of goals on Jordan Binnington. And that could be very bad for the St. Louis Blues because Colorado's defense is pretty damn good. Hey, a guy named Cale Makar, another USA Hockey. Well, I shouldn't say Cale Makar is USA Hockey. He's Canadian born, but he played at UMass national championship. Okay, so he's like
by way of American education.
Yeah, I know. I normally refer to Cale Makar as one of my USA Hockey guys. So I'm like, okay, he's a USA Hockey guy. He played here in the States in college. He decided to pass on that junior nonsense and go to school and get an education.
There he goes. So he's got some smarts there. Speaking of USA Hockey, what about my guy Quinn Hughes? I know his team's not in the playoffs, but I love me some Quinn Hughes. He's American, right? He's from Orlando.
He is, yeah. Him and Jack Hughes both, and their brother who's about to enter the league. They're all from Orlando. So Orlando, and then like they have Michigan ties.
Yeah.
So so you'll see them on the stats written as Orlando, Florida, most of the time.
So I was in Vancouver a year and a half ago in November. We went to 2 Canucks games, my girlfriend and I. And I was looking at the roster, and I said, before we go, I got to pick my favorite player. So I'm looking. I don't know. I'm like, okay, Brock Besser. Who do I pick? I don't know. And then I saw Orlando, Florida, and I was like, okay, that's easy for me. I'm going with the Florida boy, Quinn Hughes. Turns out he's like a top 5, top 10 defenseman, and he's only like in his second year. So I'm like, let's go Quinn Hughes. That's my guy. That's what I'm going with.
Him and Cale Makar both are just like unreal. Like if you have watched hockey for a very long time, you know the name Brian Leetch, former Ranger, big time USA Hockey guy, won the Conn Smythe. I believe he was one of the first Americans to ever win the Conn Smythe. But he reminds me a lot. Those 2 players remind me a lot of Brian Leetch, just able to do what, like, they're like, I don't want to say they're on the level of Connor McDavid, but they can do whatever they want with the puck, and it's going to go their way. They have some flaws in the defensive zone, but they are just so good when the puck is in their hands, and it's unreal. Quinn Hughes is a nice guy to lock onto.
I like what you said there about Leach. I have a question for you. I don't want to put you on the spot. Who was the enforcer from like the early 2000s, like the best enforcer? He was on the cover of like the NHL games. I can't think of his name. Not Jerome McGinley. It was like around that era.
Enforcer on the cover of the NHL games.
Best enforcers. I'm trying to think of his name. When I hear his name, I'm going to be like, oh yeah, it's a very simple name. I think he was an American. But if you find it, let me know because I'm trying to think of it. But anyway, for the Avalanche Blues, what's your prediction for this one?
I think the Avalanche take this one in 5. I have 6 on my bracket. Yeah,
no, you don't go first. I go first this time.
Okay,
I have Avalanche in 6, so that you have to copy me now.
That's fair enough. Also, I think you're thinking of Scott Stevens was on the cover of what? Let's see here. Where'd he go? He's on here somewhere.
Maybe
I have the Avs in 6. That's what I have on my bracket. I'll stick with that. I think they get caught by Binnington and they lose a few games and they have to battle back, and which is good for the Avalanche because they need to face that adversity because they'll most likely be matched up against the winner of this next series, which we'll get into.
Yeah, right now, Vegas versus Minnesota. I think this is kind of a sneaky good series because I think Minnesota is kind of an underrated team, and that's just kind of from watching a few of their games recently. I think they have what it takes, and obviously they showed that in Game 1, taking Vegas to overtime and winning 1-0. First time the NHL playoffs have ever started with 3 consecutive overtime games, and we were really only a minute away from a 4th overtime game with the Lightning Panthers. So the Wild take Game 1, 1-0 in overtime. Does that change your thoughts on this series at all?
It doesn't. It doesn't in terms of like who's going to win. I think it does when you look at how many games it goes because what Minnesota's doing is they are buying into a system. And like that normally really bodes well for teams in all sports is when you buy in to what your coach is preaching. And that's what Minnesota is doing. I mean, last night you saw the kid who's going to win Rookie of the Year this year, Kirill Kaprizov. He went down to block a shot in a key moment of the game. When you have star players willing to put their body on the line to block a shot, that's when you know the team is buying in. And you look at the goal that was scored in overtime. It was the forecheck of the Minnesota Wild. They kept pounding and pressuring the Vegas team and ended up forcing the turnover. Jordan Greenway, another USA Hockey guy right there, ends up giving the assist there to the goal by, I believe it was Joel Eriksson Ek. But I mean, it's a team that's bought in to the system that is given to them, and their forecheck is very aggressive. They force a lot of turnovers. Vegas is still a very good team, though.
Vegas is a good team. 82 points for them as well. By the way, reason I thought of this guy is because I knew he played for the Blues, and I'm pretty sure he was on the cover when he was with the Blues. The guy I was thinking of was Chris Pronger.
Oh, yeah.
Chris Pronger from the 1999 game. Yeah. He was on the cover as a St. Louis Blue, or NHL 2000, excuse me. So that's who I was thinking of. But I do remember Scott Stevens as well. Yep. So the Las Vegas Golden Knights, obviously, they've been great since they pretty much entered the league, since their inception. They went to the finals their first year in the league, and I think they got swept in that. I don't remember. Did they get swept? Or?
I think they did win a game. I don't think they got swept. I think it was Washington in 5. I want to say Washington in 5.
So all they've known is success, right? So you talk about experience. They have a lot of good guys. Marc-Andre Fleury's a great player. They have Mark Stone as well, who's another great one. They just have a lot of great guys. In fact, I was looking up top 25 players in the 2021 playoffs. I was reading that article earlier. I think it was like Sporting News. Ironically enough, I feel like the Las Vegas Golden Knights have one of the better rosters top to bottom, but they only had 2 guys on the list.
Yeah, they have a lot of guys that just do the right thing. I mean, Mark Stone is one of the best players in the league, but doesn't get mentioned all the time because he's like a Patrice Bergeron. He just plays the game the right way. He plays in all 3 zones where he's winning faceoffs. He's stealing the puck away. He can put the puck in the back of the net and also get assists. So he just does everything the right way. I feel like Fleury and Mark Stone were the only 2 people listed on that, or maybe
they were the only 2. And I think The Lightning had four with Hedman, Stamkos, Kuch, and Vazzy all in the top 16. And then I think the Boston Bruins were the other with Marchand, Pasternak, Bergeron, and Hall.
So wait, Braden Point wasn't listed on that?
No, Braden Point was not on that
list. People are. I'm not a Lightning fan, and I have said this since I did a school project on Braden Point, and it was basically my apology to Braden Point because I was so against him because I thought that the player of Braden Point was made because of Steven Stamkos and made because of Nikita Kucherov. Then both those guys went out, and Braden Point was doing what he was doing and coming up super clutch in the playoffs last season, and he's doing it again this season. And people are sleeping on Braden Point because he to me is you easily put him in the top 25 players in the playoffs right now.
Yeah, I would put him ahead of Stamkos right now with the way Point's been playing. Not Kuch per se, but I think Stamkos kind of has the name power to be in that list. I would put Braden Point as a Lightning fan ahead of Stamkos. When Point has the puck, I'm a little more confident in the outcome of the play than when Stamkos has it. For right now, and you mentioned Braden Point younger in his career. When Jonathan Drouin was on the Lightning, I was actually a bigger fan of Drouin than Point. And when Drouin left, I was kind of upset. Looking back, I was wrong. Braden Point, like you said, he's kind of been undervalued his whole time in Tampa. I think because of all the superstar power around him.
Yeah, and I would go as far as I would put Braden Point over both Kucherov and Stamkos as a better player.
Okay.
Only because like the Kucherov not playing the entire season kind of plays into that. But playoff Braden Point is a different beast. He flies under the radar during the regular season. He scores his goals. He does what he has to do. But in the playoffs, when he has the puck, you better watch out because Braden Point's going to do damage. And you saw it. Well, I mean, I saw a few breakaways in those close games between all the four games that we saw this weekend. And when Braden Point had the puck, he obviously buried it. But it's like one of those things where that's just what he does. You can expect Braden Point to make a play and make a big impact on a game.
Yeah, no, he's definitely a game breaker. He changes the game. He can swing the momentum. We saw that. We were talking about the Knights versus the Wild, so we'll get back to that. I forgot what we were talking about for a second, but one of my favorite under-the-radar series. Who do you got in this series?
I have Vegas. It's Vegas and Vegas in 6. I have Vegas in 6. I think they figure it out. It's a very close game. The thing is can Cam Talbot continue to play lights out? That was one of the big things for the Minnesota Wild that kept them in that game. I mean, this was a goaltender's dream in this game. I mean, the play of Cam Talbot and the play of Marc-Andre Fleury was incredible. I think it continues down that path, but Marc-Andre Fleury is going to get the better of him. And I think you could see Marc-Andre Fleury get 2 shutouts in this series.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, I think you can see Marc-Andre Fleury get 2 shutouts this series because of how well he's been playing and how well Vegas can keep the puck in Minnesota's zone.
Gotcha. And so you're taking Vegas in how many?
6. Vegas in 6.
Vegas in 6. I am going to go Vegas in 7. Vegas in 7 just because there's something about the Wild that I like. I don't know if it's because I'm like a Minnesota Timberwolves fan, so I just feel obligated to like the Wild a little bit. But we're both taking the Knights in this one, which sets up for the 2 best teams in the league point-wise to meet in the next round. And let's go back to the Eastern Conference or the East Division and do the second round real quick. Just kind of run through the picks of what we think is going to happen. And you had Boston versus the Islanders. Who do you got in that one?
I have Boston in that one. The goaltending and the scoring depth is kind of what pushes Boston through.
Okay, so you have Boston over the Isles. I am going to take Boston over Pittsburgh in that one, and that's almost like March Madness style just because you sold me on the Islanders. I don't want to take Pittsburgh moving on if they might not even get past the Isles. So I'll take Boston in that one as much as I hate to do that. In the North, we both had Toronto versus Edmonton. Easy one here for me. I'm going to take Toronto. What do you got?
I have Edmonton.
Actually. You have Edmonton in this one?
I have Edmonton in that one just because I think Toronto ends up continuing to choke. And again, it goes back to Connor McDavid being Connor McDavid, and the offensive power from them beats the defense of the Toronto Maple Leafs.
I mean, I maybe I jumped the gun on Toronto. Maybe I'll just say Toronto in 7. I would like to see Edmonton move on just because, like I said, I like watching Connor McDavid.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to go with Toronto in this one. We got the Central Division, Carolina versus Tampa. Who do you have?
I have Tampa. Oh, I hate picking Tampa, but Tampa in 7.
I'm also going to go with Tampa by no one's surprise in that one. But I also think Carolina is kind of like a sneaky good team. I didn't even know they had 80 points, which is like second best, third best in the league. And then Colorado versus the Vegas Golden Knights. Who do you have in this one?
I have Vegas in that one. I have Vegas.
I'm also going to go with Vegas in that one. So that sets it up for you with Vegas versus the Oilers. Who do you have in that?
I have Vegas in that one. I would have Vegas in 5.
Vegas in 5. Okay. I am also going to go Vegas, and I am going to go 6 in that one. Vegas in 6 there. And then I have no, wait a minute. I had Vegas versus the Bruins. I apologize. Yeah, because they had 82 and 7. Because the points, the reseeding is kind of wild.
Yeah, it goes crazy after the first 2 rounds.
Then you know what? I'm going to keep riding Boston on this one. If it was the Oilers the other way around, I'm going to ride Boston on this one because they're a better team than Edmonton, which I thought was the matchup. So I'm going to go with Boston in this one, but I'm going to go 7 because I think that could be a fun series to watch. And then you have Lightning versus Leafs versus you have what's the next one for you?
I should have Lightning. I should have Lightning Bruins. I think if it reseeds, Colorado was the best. It goes Colorado, Vegas, Boston, Tampa. I think that's
so you have Bruins. Yep. Yeah, you're right.
I have Tampa, Colorado, Vegas, and Boston. Oh man, holy crap. A Vegas Boston conference final. Oh my. I would have Vegas in 7. And
you had Vegas versus the Oilers and then Lightning versus the Bruins.
Vegas versus the Oilers, Lightning, Bruins. Okay, got it. Oh yeah,
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so Vegas against, you said the Oilers or
no, you already took Vegas in that one.
Yep. And then Lightning Oilers. Okay, got it.
Lightning Bruins for the champion, like for the other conference final.
I have the Lightning. My Stanley Cup ends up being the Lightning and the Vegas Golden Knights.
Okay, that's what we have here.
There's just so much happening.
Especially when I don't have the bracket in front of me. I'm doing this all on paper.
It's I told it to my guys, and I was like, this is not good for the NHL. A league that has a tough time getting fans in as it is, when they bring in a confusing bracket challenge. I was trying to promote it on my show, and I was like, how can I realistically think people are going to join in this when they have the confusion of what happens after during the reseeding? It's tough. It's a tough look.
Yeah. It's tough. So just to second team was the Lightning with 75. Your third team was the Bruins with 73. Your fourth team was the Oilers with 72. So that's your final 4. My final 4 was Vegas with 82, Toronto with 77, Lightning with 75, Bruins with 73. I took Bruins over Vegas in my first matchup. Now I have Lightning Maple Leafs. I'm going to go Tampa Bay in that one because, like you kind of mentioned with Toronto versus Edmonton, I don't even know if Toronto's going to get past Edmonton. So I'll go Boston, and then I'll take Tampa. So then your championship is Vegas versus Tampa.
Yeah. My Stanley Cup would be those 2 teams, and I think along the storyline of the Tampa Bay Lightning, they will end up playing they will be playing in Game 7 against the Panthers. They'll be playing in Game 7 when they play Carolina, and then when they go to the conference finals against whoever it is, it'll be another 7-game series, and that is going to not be good for the Tampa Bay Lightning because then they'll face a Vegas team who is up for the task, and Vegas is my Stanley Cup champions.
So we got Vinny taking Vegas. And I am going to be the most absolute homer. And for purposes of my happiness, I'm going to take Tampa Bay over Boston. Tampa Bay to beat Boston back-to-back. Honestly, no matter what it came down to, I was going to end up with Tampa Bay winning it all anyway because I'm a Lightning fan. So it wasn't going to change. I'm sure you would do the same if it was the Rangers.
Oh yeah. Can I get your thoughts on this here real quick though?
Yeah.
So last year during the COVID seasons of every sport, you kind of saw the best teams, the teams that were the best on paper, win it all. I mean, the Dodgers won, the Bucks won, the Lightning won, and the Lakers won. Preseason odds, those were the same teams that you'd probably see in the championship. That was that season. It was like a COVID season. The best teams ended up winning. Do you think it's going to be like the same thing this coming season when like teams play an actual schedule? Like this season, they obviously played a 56 game season. You have Tampa winning, maybe not because you're just a homer pick, but because they're that good. Do you see that ending up happening when the NFL season comes back where it's the best team again, or it could be the opposite of the COVID times?
So it's difficult because it really kind of boils down to how much do the fans play a role in the outcome of games. And I've talked about that with so many people, and it really started boiling down to, is the talent superseding the fact that there's no fans? The most talented team is winning because there's no home ice advantage or home court advantage or home field advantage. No matter what it was, the most talented team was winning. So then you insert fans and you see all this craziness go on. If it doesn't turn out to be the best teams winning, we've already seen the Dodgers. They've lost like 10 of their last 15 games. I think it's going to get back to a little bit of normal conditions when it comes to the outcomes. I don't think we see a situation where the best teams are winning. One, because that's a complete anomaly. Like that was just a weird thing to watch. That doesn't typically happen in sports. And two, I think fans play a role more than people want to give them credit for when it comes to not only the noise and the sound and the distraction, but also I think the players playing on home ice or home court, they get that boost of energy to go that, if they're not the favorite, they move forward, they find, that extra energy, that extra jolt, and they move forward. And I'll say this, not to ramble on, it even happened in NASCAR awkwardly where fans don't really matter. Last year in NASCAR, Kevin Harvick won like 7 races, Denny Hamlin won 8 races, Martin Truex, all the same guys were winning. Now this year, in the first 13 races, there's only been 2 repeat winners. The other guys, there's been new winners every week except for 2 weeks. So, and that was only this most recent week in Martin Truex Jr. and Alex Bowman. So it was happening in a lot of sports.
Yeah, I found it so weird after all the championships happened last season. I was like, the best of the best teams on paper ended up winning. We could see it differently this season where we see the Cinderella story return.
Well, I hope to see it differently because I doubt anyone's penciling the Jaguars in as the best team on paper. So I hope that might be the first difference.
17-0, baby.
Yeah, let's go. Let's go. Well, Vinny, hey, I appreciate you being here, man. It was a lot of fun. Hopefully everyone enjoyed listening to some hockey talk, prepared for the NHL playoffs. We got some games coming up here tonight. Got games all through the rest of the week. And who knows, when we get down to the Final Four, maybe we'll do a little Final Four finals preview kind of thing. All right?
Yeah, whenever you want, man. I'm here.
All right, man. I appreciate it. Take care.
Thanks, buddy.
All righty.
How can I be the man when you're the man? How can I be the man when you're the man? How can I be the man when you're the man?